Welcome, fellow pilots. I hope everyone is having a great day and enjoying the holidays. This is going to be a VOD review and gameplay highlight of a fun brew of mine, basically a deck that features 0 bases, one that I took to a new type challenge during Season 2 and won with. The following footage is meant for entertainment purposes and was played out at locals during the GD02 season between the new type challenge 2 and 3. And I'm not saying it's going to win you a new type challenge, but I definitely believe it has the ability to do that for you. So, if anything, give it a try, see what works for you, and modify it as you see fit. Big thank you to all the chill members of my community that allow me to record and post up these matches. And stay tuned for a deck breakdown at the end of the match, or skip ahead for it in the timestamp below. Either way, thanks for watching. So, without further ado, please enjoy. Alright, Gundam pilots. So we got ourselves a gameplay VOD review of my match against Red-White King. Unfortunately here, I do lose the die roll. So I have a look at my 5 cards. It is an Amuro, 2 Rictius, Show of Affection, and a Lefrith. I actually like my hand, so I keep it. My opponent, however, does opt to mulligan, so we just wait for him up there and do that, do all that in order. During this time, we're kind of just discussing what we're doing with the new type challenge and just what we're looking forward to with the next set, which, hey, if you guys actually have anything you're looking forward to in GD03 and you want to see a deck, let me know. Maybe I'll brew something up with it. I'm, always in Ray Knight's channel, or Discord channels, brewing things and trying things out for locals, trying different things out at various locals I do play at. Not all of them have video just because space is cramped, but I try to get some footage where I can. So when we get started off here, it's a draw go. Both of us actually have nothing to play until our respective second turns. I did happen to get my Overflowing Affection, which allows me to filter a little bit. Which, knowing his deck is Red-White King, I'm not too worried about playing out fast or hyper efficient. I'm looking more for playing out things and getting value. I need to outpace my opponent to really bring it home here. Me pitching the Rictius to the Overflowing Affection does signal I have another Rictius. My opponent does know it, and basically I show that I'm doing it. Playing it out. He dumps out a Striker pack. We're doing some very typical blockers matchup gameplay here. One thing that is nice is I do have the typical advantage of being a blue deck, but I block his Rictius with my own and use my Unforeseen Instant and get a bit of value. It's incremental value, I suppose, but it's more of a tempo play at this point. It still costs me a card to take care of one of his cards. At this point, we're basically just chipping and poking at each other, but it is important when you're playing the game, playing a blockers game, and you have the card advantages to try and make sure you are making some good plays, and good plays when you can, and patiently. So you don't want him to have a board that allows him to protect things like his Sinanju. So at this point, I am just trying to get rid of a lot of his cards and make sure that I have board control up until the end when we're fighting for top deck, because that is when it's really going to matter. And I do take out his token, which is alright. I take some damage, and I pass my turn. At the end of the turn, he does hit me for a close combat, which he's not super happy about, but it is his efficient play. And he actually passes here because he does his curve skip. I take the time to refill my hand, just rebuild the card advantage. I'm not looking to dump things out. I don't really want to fall into a trap of some sort of close combat shenanigans at the end of his turn. We'll see what he gets. Take a poke at his base, and then I play my own striker pack. There's an argument for me to have used the sword here, but I think just the 2/4 is okay. I just don't want to get blown out by a close combat or something crazy like that. So he plays the Ale Strike, and he doesn't actually have anything pilot to pair that he wants to pair yet. So we're looking pretty alright. And, you know, keeping where I'm at here, I have Overflowing Affection, a Zex, Unforeseen Incident, an Amuro. I do have an Epyon in hand. I believe I have an Aerial now, and an Overflowing Affection, Show of Resolve, actually. I do end up pitching another Zex, leaving me with an Epyon and a Zex in hand, and a gun tank. Or gun cannon, sorry. So I have the pair there. I'm just kind of slowly building up to the pace there. And you're going to find playing this deck is you are just looking for, you know, getting those values in there. Overflowing, or Show of Resolve over here, just even more cards in my hand, just keeping my opponent struggling to get some value out of his cards. And now I'm just kind of building up the board because I do have the Amuro in hand, or no, I don't have the Amuro in hand, but I have the Epyon in hand, so there's a point where I can make a fairly aggressive big swing and try and blow him out. He does get the Sinanju here, which is actually like pretty scary. It does force me to be a little more aggressive in the next following turn. He takes out my base, and he leaves Sinanju up there. He leaves the Ale Strike up there to block the Sinanju after he's tapped out. It's good for me because I do have an Amuro in hand, which I am going to basically spend 3 cards to take care of his Sinanju. I don't love it, and this is a point where I do fall a little bit behind in the card trade. However, I can't really allow the Sinanju to run amok. It will just ping me down, put me in a lot of danger. If he just somehow happens to have a second Sinanju, it's basically Jover. So I need to neutralize it now while I have the chance, while I'm confident he has no combat tricks or anything of the sort. So... and also, I have that Unforeseen Incident in my hand. It doesn't really help whatsoever in this case. So instead of worrying too much about it, I do just take the swing at him, get rid of it, make my trade, and then instead of taking out his Ale Strike, I actually go over here and just get rid of his base and ping at chip at his shields, and then I drop another Rick Diaz here, just to again maintain my board presence. He's got his own dig. He's got the nice dig, by the way. Look at that. Look at that pretty card he got at the very top there. I have an Aerial in hand, and basically holding that Unforeseen Incident, I'm also looking now to get Epyon out when I have 9 resources as opposed to 8. Just so I can kind of protect him if I really, really, really want to. It doesn't actually happen as often as you'd think. Like, usually Epyon's just swinging into 2 things, killing them, and, you know, moving on with his life. However, he is also going to get me quite a bit of advantage here. He changes his mind from my launcher to my Rick Diaz, which honestly worked out really well for him. Yeah, and hitting my striker pack where he did, it meant I was unable to play out the token while my launcher was on the board. Now, that's kind of unfortunate when that happens, but he is playing around the launcher very well because it isn't really a card. And I think that I maybe could have, taken a swing at his other Ale Strike before, but instead of that, I decide just to drop my Aerial and my Rick Diaz and build up for another bigger swing the next turn. It also allows me to keep one card up there for the unforeseen in case I decide I want to. He makes actually the play to not block my launcher. And again, this only costs him a shield, but it also means that if he goes in for another swing and he hits another striker pack, I can't make use of it. The odds are low because most people are using 2 to 3 striker packs, but sometimes that is what all you got to do. And then he just starts to catch up on the board, does his best to get to a point where he can also just make a big final swing on me. And he goes in and bounces my Rick Diaz one more time, leaving that launcher strike down, and gives me a poke. Gives me 2 pokes, actually. Now, this, I think, was a little greedy. However, here comes the Epyon, because I am now at a proper 9 that I wanted to do. So I count out 7, and the 1 for the 8, and drop an Epyon down real hard. Now, when I play this Epyon, there is a thought that goes through both of our heads of, am I swinging twice, or am I making him swing? And I actually opt to not value his shield too much because A, he could burst something, and B, I want to clear his board as best I can, and also, if I can take out 4 of his cards with 2 of mine and as well as draw 2 more cards, I'm feeling in a pretty high value position here. And sometimes there's just getting value out of that as best you can, and otherwise I wouldn't have had the option of trading. He would have just used the Kshatriya probably to swing back into it. And honestly, I would rather have the card right now, because at this point I am also digging for another Zex. As you may have seen, I had a couple of Epyons, or at least one more Epyon in my hand. And while they're nice and big, there are 2 Epyons in there. They don't exactly help me get to a game plan, and I could really use a pilot right about now. He actually burst his own Ale Strike there, yeah. And he hits an Amuro. Good for me, really. Swings with a Cubely, hits my striker pack again. Boy howdy, I can't use it. And I am actually opting not to block him here, because if all goes well, I can swing back next turn because of that Amuro, so it did change my math a little bit. And now we are in the next stage here. It goes into my favor pretty handily, which is real nice. I don't play the Amuro down yet, just in case, even though it really doesn't have a huge matter, but if he bursts a shield here, I'm basically dead. Luckily, that isn't the case. That doesn't happen, and play Amuro, and we go in there and get it done. That is basically the game. Who needs shields? Alright, Gundam players, this is the last half of the video where we go over the deck and the choices I made in it. Nothing too spectacularly crazy here. I just wanted to try something a little different. I opted not to run the Kiras with the Freedoms, even though I do think that they're probably good cards to run. I just wanted to try some of the Japanese tech that I've seen where they're running no bases every now and then. Granted, they're running them in different decks than this, but I do kind of feel like this deck can run without bases. As you may have seen in the gameplay video, the base lack of bases was definitely a little shaky, but again, there's also no guarantee that you hit bases when you're only running 4. Um, Looking over the list, you've got your Amuro package, Amuro Ray with Gundam and Gun Cannon. These guys basically let you control the board. You see it all the time in One Year War. And then you've got Lifrith, Rick Diaz, very simple, very basic choices here. Nothing crazy. If you got blockers, you're running both of these cards. The aerial rebuild, I'm pretty happy with. It's got the high maneuver. It's kind of like a Sinanju without the. It's honestly a worse cost, but it does have the high maneuver built in, and if you pair it, it does get the blocker trait. So, thematic, but also just in white, it's one of your better cards that you can play for things. Following up with that, you have the Justice Gundam, which is another form of card advantage. It is 2 bodies for the cost of 1. Pretty efficient. It's good into a variety of plays here, including green-white wing for stabilization after it happens. That they wing 0 you. It also just allows you to keep up with the board after a poor trade. And then you have Epyon, kind of your bread and butter closer. And a lot of the times this card ends up being like a 4 for 2, which is such an insane card in the long run. And I think it's actually really, really good still, even though it has kind of fallen off in the recent weeks. You saw in the video that I actually took out 2 large bodies with 1 and got 2 cards off of it, and I think that was one of the things that got me through the game the most, because allowing those bodies free reign and the ability to swing at other things was just the way to go. Suletta, I'm a little bit unimpressed with. I think I can actually drop her in theory. I don't think she's necessary for Ariel to swing and pair with and link with. She hasn't been a super huge card in the first place. I like her 1/2 stat, which isn't bad, but at the same time, I think I could honestly remove her for a couple bases. Likewise, Overflowing Affection might be able to go down to a 3 of. I could probably maybe toss in like 2 Corsica bases or something like that, or 3. Unforeseen Incident, I think this card's really good. It allows me to save my cards and block the things I want to block. It does allow, Rick Diaz maybe to become more of a 3 for 2, or a 3 for 1, or a 3 for 2 really is what it turned into. And then Striker Pack is kind of your pseudo shield. It's just there to be annoying and be another blocker. Add to the pile of bodies your opponent has to climb over in order to get to your life. And then, of course, we have Show of Resolve. Nothing special there, nothing crazy there. It's a good old-fashioned true card advantage. And so basically you're fine with this deck. It's a lot of it is just about getting high value out of your choices. Not everything is going to be like that, but like the way I look at it when I play this deck is how many cards am I trading to make to kind of control the board, and controlling the board with this deck is actually a lot more important than other decks, just because you aren't running shields. So knowing when to block and how to get the maximum value out of your blockers is going to be a big thing here. To the point where putting pilots on the right units is also going to be one of the most important things to do. I'm not too sure what I do if I take out the Solettas. I do think that maybe they can be dropped. But there's lots of cards to play around with here, like Suletta, a Striker Pack, Unforeseen Incident, Overflowing Affection. You can easily cut, that to 3, and then the Striker Pack and Unforeseens back to a more traditional 2. And then figure out what you're going to do with Suletta in the first place. Right now, there's nothing you really, really, really need to put in place of her. You could easily just put more Zawarts, but if you wanted to go against the theme of the deck, as I mentioned before, Corsica base, white base, even the Archangel would help you. So you have some options. There's some flexibility in here. It's not a fully solved thing, but I do think the Epyon and aerial rebuild combination is pretty strong. The fact that you can basically go Justice or Aerial the turn before you play Epyon also really helps. A lot of the times I do actually try to get Epyon out with Unforeseen Incident as a defensive measure, and I think that will work out pretty well going forward. Um, Definitely when the new set comes out, GD03, the NT1 is going to probably be easily a 4 in this deck somehow. Either you're cutting down a Justice and an Aerial, and then cutting your Soletus entirely, um, just to get that card in, because that card is going to be very, very strong for this deck. Anyways, that is going to be it for me, and I hope to see you guys in the next one.